The following video may contain sensitive topics. The views and opinions of the presenter to these are plainly his own. Furthermore, any and all views and opinions of the presenter do not in any way reflect the views, opinions, statements, and advocacies of his personal contacts, his family, his affiliations, and his profession. While the presenter makes a commitment that all content is original, he is obliged to cite references or acknowledge resources mentioned or used in the production of this video. This disclaimer is also written in the description below.
Hey Nico, check out your mail. What is this? Brusco bros say cease and desist? A comet streaking across the night sky has long been associated as a bad or catastrophic omen. All ancient and medieval civilizations have long thought of comets as the angels of death and of judgment. In particular, the doom of Harold Hardrada when William the Bastard of Normandy became William the Conqueror of England in 1066. And putting superstition and the plot of the 90s film Deep Impact aside, the latest comet gracing our night sky, Comet 2020 F3 NEOWISE, came in the midst of a global pandemic. While it is a sight to behold, and indeed it is given the rarity of their visits, does this usher in the common thought of worse things to come? I guess it is not only I who will say these words at this time. God forbid that happens. Hello everyone, Ian here, and I'm back on my new normal routine of sharing videos here on YouTube. It has been a long month for me, so please bear with me if it gets stretched too much. Now to start off, we have been made aware of the fact that ABS-CBN is broadcasting no longer. Their franchise renewal application denied in the most suspicious of circumstances. I have already tackled that matter in one of my previous videos, which you can check out here or in the playlist on the description below. Before focusing on our own country, the world has also been a bit screwing itself too much. The United States is unofficially having a second Cold War against China for basically everything, while containing a protest movement back at home, among other things. China, on the other hand, is facing a flooding fiasco, as some of the older dams along the Yangtze are starting to fail. Churches burned, monuments defaced, the Hagia Sophia becomes a mosque again. It's been issues here and there and everywhere, but let me get to some of that later. But before we go on, we also lost quite a bunch of people along the way. Church musicians like German Monsignor Georg Ratzinger, yes, Pope Benedict's older brother, and Filipino Dom Benildus Maramba, robotics hero Grant Imahara of Mythbusters fame, and quite recently, Filipino broadcaster priest Father Larry Faraon. The last time he was heard was when he offered Mass at the Radio Veritas Chapel on the 15th of July, which I heard from my workstation. To all of them, and to those who I haven't mentioned, may they be granted eternal rest and be illuminated with perpetual light. May they all rest in peace. Now, back to the land of the living, and back to the war zone that is the YouTube drama. While I do not like to tackle these things at all, the fact that they exist at all for everyone to see is something I consider as a disservice to the social media community as a whole. First and foremost is the continuing saga between Salvador Nicolas David and Mark Jason Warnacolahewa, also known as Nico David and Makagago, respectively. If you've been following either one of them, it's been a shit show, with mud and turd slinging involved. This comes to a head when, a few weeks ago, Makagago and one of the Brusco brothers filed libel cases against Nico. I'm alleging this is for ND's diss video, Bitch Ni Jona, which he promptly removed from the platform, or at least hidden as a private video. As I try not to be involved in this, and because of the fact that the original material may be the focus of Mark Jason's legal action against Nico, I have decided with a heavy heart to put my version of the Bitch Lasagna parody to private. That also means I suspend my commentaries about this matter as a gesture of respect to the due process of the law. But before I move on and before I do that, let me end this segment with a few fabricated bars from Felix Kjellberg's PewDiePie diss track to T-series called Congratulations. Basically, the parody of this specific bar. Hey Nico, check out your mail. What is this? Brusco bro say cease and desist? Anyway, if I have to choose between Nico and Mark Jason, I'll side with Nico David. As I have mentioned a lot of times now in this channel, I admire his way of scientifically and legally debunking cringy and absolutely stupid content in all of social media. If you are Team Kamatis all the way, I absolutely suggest you donate for his legal battle. The links and means to donate are provided on the description below. On a personal note, this is the least that I can do. And from one YouTuber to another, a few videos ago I have to talk about PaoLUL and the apparent dismay of one particular cringy Filipino YouTuber just because everybody's favorite tito behind Kong TV Velasquez and Nico David was only explaining how fair use works and why people should be careful about what they say as it may lead to ridicule and hypocrisy. And PaoLUL is approaching 1 million subscribers and some of them are memeing the crap out of him and the people he tackle in his videos. So kung gusto nyo maging cancer, mag-subscribe kayo sa channel niya at nasa baba yung link sa page niya. And pindutin nyo na rin yung utong bell dahil yun yung gusto niya. So just do it, okay? Just do it. Maghihintay ako dito. Just do it. Pause the video. Mag-subscribe kayo kay PaoLUL. Just do it. Okay na? Sige, tuloy ko na to ha. And now, more controversy for Star Image, the agency where Makagago, Keith Talents, and the Brusco brothers are currently signed with. Marlu Arizala, aka Xander Ford, allegedly came out of the closet as a bisexual. While I don't really care about the sexual orientation and the gay culture in general, or at least I am not interested in going down that rabbit hole, I just think it's either he just wants to be relevant again after he allegedly committed abuse against his ex-girlfriend, or he's just doing it as a publicity stunt. Maybe both, but we would not know for sure. Because of the buzz he made, Star Image had to suspend Arizala from all their projects, maybe to let him get his shit together, or to gently chide him not to mix his personal and professional life, and or to face the consequences of his alleged abusive actions. And speaking of sexual abuse in the gaming community, last month or 2 months ago, or by the end of June yata yun, disturbed Lorenzo has been permanently kicked out of the Peenoise realm or the Peenoise group of Gloco and Trinil fame for alleged sexual abuse raps against his ex-girlfriend who, unfortunately, exposed the monster behind Peenoise's former silent giant. So, for one last time, in typical Peenoise fashion, I say, Bubu Lorenzo! I hate to say that, but I have to. And halfway across the Pacific, on the beautiful islands of Hawaii, a certain Filipina expat YouTuber allegedly broke COVID-19 lockdown restrictions and got arrested for it. Luckily for this girl, she's on bail. But one thing's for sure, that ugaling Pilipinas her mom warned her of more than a year ago, which I also shared in one of my earliest videos here on YouTube, is something she still has in her system. Ay, Pinay ka talaga, Mika Salamanca. If you have heard the word allegedly or alleged in the past few sentences and paragraphs, it is because it is what it is. Allegations. Now to more serious stuff. Catholics around the world are targeted and hard-pressed on all sides. From rioters across the Americas to theological traitors in Rome and elsewhere in Europe, to governments and politicians in Asia, to trolls and anarchists everywhere within and between. Quick disclaimer, pardon me if I cannot squeeze this part dry, as it is just too big to tackle. Now we all know that the church in the Philippines setting has been active when it comes to being the conscience of the people, both for the good and for the bad. One prime example is its rather sharp but predictable opposition to the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020. While it is understandable that some of the Filipino bishops are just too noisy, it takes a lot of discernment to see and understand where they are coming from. Well, it's just weird that people currently in power and their supporters espouse a xenophobia against Catholics who are just doing their moral duty while trying to toe the line, citing the principle of the separation of church and state, but tolerates the schemes of other religious groups who directly or indirectly wield their influence, or so they think they have, to advance their own agenda and basically contradict that said principle, that they turn a blind eye on the bad and evil practices of the other religious groups who turn to the Bible as the basis of their creed. Am I alone in thinking that it sounds familiar to what French revolutionaries did when they deposed the monarchy in 1789 and thereafter ditched Catholicism for the cults of reason and of the Supreme Being? For that, I digress. So let's jump right into the scenario that happened during this year's State of the Nation address. On the day of the SONA, Quiapo Church organized a votive mass for the nation and its leaders. While it is cringy enough to hear priests and bishops making their voices heard about the Anti-Terrorism Act of 2020, it is still tolerable as you can still filter it within yourself. But flashing activist placards inside a house of prayer and while mass is going on, and allowing other religions to pray inside Christian houses of prayer, that is a different story. Now let me get to the latter question first. We all heard the news. The cathedral, not the museum, of Hagia Sophia has been repurposed as a mosque after being a museum for almost 100 years. Now apparently the Turks are all alone in the Muslim world in this regard. But there is a precedence for this abomination. In Cordoba, one of the two major cities of Andalusia in Spain, a mosque was erected on the grounds of a Visigothic cathedral. It is one of the many in the long list of mosques the Moors made that later on, as the Reconquista was in full swing, were either razed to the ground or converted and reconstructed as churches and cathedrals in a practical move. Toledo Cathedral was built to cover all Islamic structure that defaced the old Visigothic church. Seville's mosque and minaret were converted to the city's cathedral and bell tower respectively. And the most obvious example of which is the Mezquita Cathedral of Cordoba. While the Spanish conquistadors have left the Moorish intricacies untouched and has basically become one of the references for Spanish architects for the next 500 years, a temple fit for the Holy Trinity was built in its midst, signifying the triumph of Christian Spain over the Muslim Al-Andalus. Now, if this lung of the church has done it, I only pray that it would be done as well in the case of the other lung. So back to the silent protest inside the church. I am pretty sure the Hijos de Nazareno, the lay organization of devotees in charge of taking care of the image of the suffering Lord of Quiapo and his shrine, managed to monitor these activists, as I would not like to label them as something else, all the more in this delicate scenario. If the Hijos would evict them out, they may be put into a bad light as collaborators of the current regime. Or worse, cry out that the move was an infringement of the already dubious principle of the separation of church and state, no thanks to Panelo. The same would be said if priests who really wanted to preserve the sanctity of the church and its masses and other services, and mind you, they are a very rare breed in the ministerial priesthood of Christ, would gently remind them to put down their signs when they enter the house of the Lord. So the national police, already marred and hated for the bad antics of their officers and colleagues, have to do the unpopular and evict them out of the church. As they say, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And real talk, those who mistake the new uniform of the PNP to the new uniform of the armed forces have to remember that the new police uniform is more bluish or yellowish. Also, the rank patches and collars are also different. And to top it all off, soldiers rarely wear lousy hats or Gloco-style hats, if you're aware of him on YouTube, to pair with their utility uniforms. So, if you see a uniformed man wearing a lousy hat near a police vehicle or outpost, I am more than sure that you're seeing a police officer than a soldier. So I have to get that clear. So to cut to the chase, let me have my say on the arrests made inside Quiapo Church as a devotee of the suffering Lord. I do understand why people clamor for a repealing of laws that deem to be either untimely or outright dubious. But politics, as much as possible, does not have any place inside any house of prayer. This applies to both the clergy who are vocal about it, the laity who flashed placards inside the church, as well as the police officers arresting the said lay folk. Why voice out these things inside the mass? And inside the church for that matter? Why force the hands of the enforcers of the law to commit such an unceremonious act? Is Plaza Miranda too jaded already, or too familiar that people would do everything to get noticed through their antics? Because if that's the case, these people are just like Carlos Celdran. May God mercy on his soul. And please, don't even get me started with this year's State of the Nation address. I was almost tempted to take a bloody drink to laugh it all off. So much for that matter. To end this video in a much lighter note, we do have witnessed things that make us think that life is still worth it and worth enjoying. One of which is the awareness about maintaining one's mental health has already penetrated our society as a whole. I am no psychologist or someone competent enough to tackle psychology, but in how I see it, we all know that the term IQ or intelligence quotient. You see, it is no longer sufficient to become the best you can be. Tatagulugin ko na. Kulang ang IQ para maging isang kontentong tao. Because aside from IQ, you would need EQ or emotional quotient and AQ or adversity quotient. Of the latter two, we have recently known about EQ and its importance vis-a-vis IQ, but it is AQ that is the most important of them all, just as charity is the greatest of the three theological virtues quoted in St. Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians. The thing is, we are not aware enough to realize that the nature of the Filipino is that of cleaving through adversity as long as he can still hold a bolo in his sword hand. This is what we call Diskarte. Diskarte and resiliency is AQ. However, since we prioritized AQ more as a people, as we have proven the world time and time again, we have forgotten to think and to feel. We have been left wanting when it comes to IQ and especially EQ. That's why many choose to survive on a dog-eat-dog society and not see his fellow man as he is. Someone who has similar strengths, weaknesses, and idiosyncrasies, who, like himself, was created in the image and likeness of God, or at least created in the same way as He is. It just shows during this pandemic. So I hope you have observed that as well. In short, Diskarte, AQ, should work hand in hand with both talino, IQ, and unawa, EQ. And finally, Team Payaman has made a great celebration as Kong TV's younger brother, Junnie Boy Velasquez, proposed to his longtime girlfriend, Vien Iligan. Now, for some reason, Junnie and Vien had a son named Mavi, and at this point, Vien was oblivious that she would be asked to get married in church by default, of course, until the early morning of July 12, 2020, when Junnie asked the question, which Vien gleefully answers in the affirmative. By the way, the proposal video and Vien's reaction to it is linked on the description below. Panoorin niyo yung videos ng soon to be mag-asawa na yon. So just check it out. Okay, just check it out after this video. Patapos na rin ako. Okay. So now I address Junnie's kuya, Kong TV. Baka naman. Tanungin mo si V. In conclusion, before my coughs are mistaken to be caused by the pandemic, allow me to wrap all of these random thoughts from how I began this video. I do hope that the visit of Comet NEOWISE would not only bring a message of warning, but also a message to keep the faith, to hope against hope, and to do all things with charity. And with all that said, this is Ian reminding you that every enlightenment and every insight is worth it as we aim for knowledge and seek wisdom, and at all times be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Until then, look alive, stay alive, and see you next time. Bye, guys.